The contrast hit like a lightning bolt across the NFL universe. On one side, Arthur Blank stood in his Atlanta estate, cutting steaks for Kevin Stefanski while unveiling a master plan built around Super Bowl contention, championship aspirations, and a coaching staff that included Bill Callahan, Tommy Rees, and Jeff Ulbrich. A complete vision, a clear strategy, a promise to Falcons fans that their 8-year playoff drought was about to end. And on the other side, 350 miles north in Cleveland, Jimmy Haslam sat in his Berea offices watching his 16th coaching search since 1999 spiral into absolute chaos as candidates withdrew, canceled interviews, and chose to be offensive coordinators elsewhere rather than lead his franchise. Mike McDaniel said no. Jesse Minter said no thanks. John Harbaugh chose the dysfunctional Giants over the Browns. And now, with Grant Udinski and Nate Scheelhaase as the only remaining options, Cleveland is doing what it does best: fumbling, stalling, embarrassing itself on a national stage while the team it just fired its coach from builds a championship contender in real time. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this isn't just about two teams going in different directions. This is about organizational competence versus organizational disaster. This is about what happens when ownership gets it right versus when ownership gets it catastrophically wrong. And this is about Kevin Stefanski proving Cleveland made the worst decision of their cursed existence. Let's start with Atlanta's master plan. The moment Arthur Blank hired Stefanski on January 18th, the machine started moving. Not slowly, not cautiously, with precision and purpose. Stefanski's first request? Tommy Rees as offensive coordinator. Done. Within 4 days, Rees was hired. Then came Bill Callahan, the legendary 70-year-old offensive line coach who had worked with Stefanski in Cleveland and built dominant fronts everywhere he's been. Hired immediately. Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator who led Atlanta to a franchise record 57 sacks in 2025, retained. Stefanski gave him full control, essentially making him the CEO of the defense. And just like that, the Falcons had their leadership structure locked in. Head coach, offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, defensive coordinator, all in place before most teams had even started second interviews. But the strategy goes deeper than just hiring coaches. Arthur Blank made it crystal clear in his statement what this is all about. Our objective is to win games and contend for championships every year, and that is where our shared focus will remain. Championships, every year. That's not corporate speak, that's a promise. And Blank backed it up by creating a completely new organizational structure, with Matt Ryan, the franchise legend, as president of football. Ryan isn't a figurehead, he's running everything: the GM search, the coaching staff decisions, the roster construction. And he handpicked Stefanski to be the centerpiece of this rebuild.
The quarterback situation is complicated, sure. Michael Penix Jr. is recovering from a torn ACL and won't be ready for the start of the season. Kirk Cousins restructured his contract and is likely heading to free agency. But here's the thing, Stefanski has worked with 15 different starting quarterbacks in his career. Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, where they had their best seasons together and Cousins made the Pro Bowl. Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, where they went to the playoffs and won a game. Joe Flacco, who Stefanski turned into a legitimate starter at age 38. The man adapts. He adjusts his system to fit the personnel. And with weapons like Bijan Robinson, a first-team All-Pro running back, Drake London, a 1,000-yard receiver, Kyle Pitts, who finally showed flashes of his potential, and Chris Lindstrom, an All-Pro guard anchoring the offensive line, Stefanski has pieces to work with. Real pieces, elite pieces, the kind Cleveland never gave him. The defensive side is even more exciting. Jeff Ulbrich just orchestrated a complete turnaround. For 6 straight years before 2025, the Falcons had the fewest sacks in the NFL. They couldn't get to the quarterback. They couldn't generate pressure. And then Ulbrich arrived and boom, 57 sacks, franchise record, second in the league. James Pierce Jr., the rookie edge rusher, had 10.5 sacks. Jalen Walker added 5.5. Xavier Watts had 5 interceptions. This defense is young, hungry and ascending, and now they have stability with Ulbrich staying and Stefanski giving him complete autonomy to run his side of the ball however he wants. The Falcons are also moving quickly on hiring a general manager. Ian Cunningham from the Chicago Bears and Josh Williams from the San Francisco 49ers are the frontrunners. Both are highly respected, both have been part of Super Bowl organizations, and the plan is to have the GM in place soon so they can work with Stefanski and Matt Ryan to attack free agency in the draft. The Falcons don't have a first-round pick in 2026 because they traded it to the Rams to draft James Pierce Jr., but considering Pierce had 10.5 sacks as a rookie, nobody in Atlanta regrets that decision. They'll start drafting at pick 48 in the second round, and mock drafts already have them targeting Georgia wide receiver Zachariah Branch, a dynamic playmaker who would give Stefanski another weapon. This is what a functioning organization looks like. Clear vision, fast execution, no drama, no hesitation, just competence. And fans are buying in. The belief in Atlanta is palpable. Analysts are predicting the Falcons could end their playoff drought as soon as 2026. The NFC South is weak. Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and Carolina all have major question marks, and with Stefanski's offensive mind, Ulbrich's defensive prowess, and the talent on the roster, Atlanta has a legitimate shot to win the division and make noise in the playoffs. That's not hype. That's the reality of what happens when you hire the right people and give them the resources to succeed.
Now let's turn to Cleveland, the dumpster fire that makes the Hindenburg look like a successful flight. Kevin Stefanski was fired on January 5th. It's now January 26th, 3 weeks later, and the Browns still don't have a head coach. Not because they're being thorough, not because they're waiting for the perfect candidate, but because nobody wants the job. Literally nobody. Mike McDaniel, the former Miami Dolphins head coach who many considered Cleveland's top target, was scheduled for a second in-person interview on January 21st, and then he withdrew completely. He told the Browns, "Thanks but no thanks. I'd rather be the offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles than be your head coach." Think about that. A guy who was a head coach for 4 years chose to take a demotion to go back to being an assistant rather than coach the Cleveland Browns. That's not just a rejection, that's a humiliation. And it gets worse. Jesse Minter, the Chargers defensive coordinator who was scheduled for a second interview on January 22nd, canceled. He doesn't even want to waste his time meeting with Cleveland again. According to Mary Kay Cabot, the respected Browns beat writer, Minter believes there are better opportunities elsewhere. He's got interest from Arizona, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. And Cleveland? Not even worth a second conversation. That's how toxic this organization has become. Candidates are literally running away. John Harbaugh, the longtime Ravens coach who grew up in Cleveland and expressed interest in potentially coaching there, chose the New York Giants instead. The Giants, a team that just went 3-14 and is a complete mess, but even they're more attractive than Cleveland, because at least the Giants have ownership that might stay out of the way. At least they have a clear path forward. Cleveland? They have Jimmy Haslam, the meddling owner who has fired 5 head coaches in 13 years. They have Andrew Berry, the general manager whose roster construction left the Browns with the 31st ranked offense in the league. They have Deshaun Watson's guaranteed contract hanging over everything like a financial nightmare. And they have no quarterback, no offensive line, no wide receivers, and no hope.
So who's left? Grant Udinski, the 30-year-old Jacksonville Jaguars offensive coordinator who has never called plays and has been a coordinator for exactly 1 season, and Nate Scheelhaase, the Los Angeles Rams passing game coordinator who can't even interview until after the NFC Championship game because the Rams are still in the playoffs. These are the Browns' options, a complete unknown and a guy that can't even talk to yet, and fans are supposed to be excited about this? The Rooney Rule has also become a massive problem. The NFL requires teams to conduct 2 in-person interviews with minority candidates before hiring a head coach. Mike McDaniel was supposed to be one of those interviews. When he withdrew, the Browns were left scrambling to find another minority candidate just to check a box. Nate Scheelhaase is biracial, so he counts as the second interview. But the optics are terrible. It looks like Cleveland is just trying to satisfy a requirement rather than genuinely pursuing the best candidates. And when you're already seen as a dysfunctional organization, that kind of thing matters. Jim Schwartz, the Browns' current defensive coordinator, completed his second interview and is reportedly a finalist. But is that really the answer? Schwartz is 59 years old, has never won a Super Bowl as a head coach, and represents the safest, most boring choice imaginable. If the Browns wanted continuity, why not just keep Kevin Stefanski? Firing a two-time Coach of the Year to hire your defensive coordinator feels lateral at best, uninspired at worst. And Browns fans know it. They're not excited, they're resigned, because this is what Cleveland does. They make the wrong decision over and over and over again.
Todd Monken, the Ravens' offensive coordinator who was Cleveland's OC under Freddie Kitchens in 2019, also completed a second interview. But Monken is about to turn 60, hasn't been a head coach in over a decade, and if he doesn't get the Browns' job, he's expected to become the Giants' offensive coordinator. So even he has a backup plan that doesn't involve Cleveland. The emotional toll on Browns fans is crushing. They watched Kevin Stefanski get hired by Atlanta and immediately start building a championship contender. They watched Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator who presided over Cleveland's 31st ranked offense, follow Stefanski to Atlanta and get another chance with actual talent. They watched Bill Callahan, the legendary offensive line coach, reunite with Stefanski and prepare to turn Bijan Robinson into the most dangerous playmaker in the league. And they watched their own organization, the team they've supported through decades of misery, fumble another coaching search so badly that the Washington Post literally ran a headline that said, "No one seems to want to coach the Cleveland Browns." That headline isn't hyperbole, it's truth, and it's devastating. Here's what makes this even more painful. The Falcons and Browns are in eerily similar situations. Both fired their head coaches after 8 and 9 seasons. Both have talented rosters with major holes at quarterback. Both have passionate fan bases desperate for success, but the outcomes couldn't be more different. Atlanta acted decisively, hired a proven winner, built a staff of elite coaches, and created a clear path to contention. Cleveland has stumbled, been rejected repeatedly, and is now down to 2 candidates who inspire zero confidence.
The difference? Ownership. Arthur Blank is 83 years old and worth $9 billion. He's patient, he's supportive, he gives his coaches resources and time to build. Jimmy Haslam is 67 years old and worth $4 billion. He meddles, he panics, he fires coaches after bad seasons, and creates a culture where nobody wants to work. And that's why Atlanta is ascending, while Cleveland continues its freefall into irrelevance. Analysts are already predicting what happens next. If the Falcons make the playoffs in 2026 and the Browns finish with another losing record, the narrative will be brutal. Kevin Stefanski, the coach Cleveland discarded, will be vindicated. Arthur Blank will be hailed as a genius. Matt Ryan's unconventional hire as president of football will be praised, and Jimmy Haslam will be exposed yet again as the problem that Cleveland can't solve. But the most heartbreaking part isn't what happens to the franchises, it's what happens to the fans. Falcons fans, who have endured 8 straight years without a playoff appearance, finally have hope. They have a coach they believe in. They have a plan they can trust. They have reason to think 2026 could be the year everything changes. Browns fans, they have Grant Udinski, a coordinator who's never called plays, or Nate Scheelhaase, a passing game specialist who might not even want the job. They have another offseason of uncertainty, another year of rebuilding, another cycle of disappointment. And Kevin Stefanski? He's in Atlanta, cooking up game plans with Tommy Rees, building an offensive line with Bill Callahan, and preparing to take the NFC South by storm. He's going to face Baker Mayfield twice a year, the quarterback he coached to a playoff win, who now openly despises him. He's going to prove that with the right organization, the right support, and the right roster, he can win at a high level. And every time the Falcons score a touchdown, every time they win a game, every time they inch closer to a championship, Cleveland will be reminded of what they gave up. Arthur Blank's Super Bowl strategy is real, it's tangible, it's happening. The Falcons are building something special. And the Browns? They're still struggling to find a head coach, still making the same mistakes, still proving that until something fundamental changes at the ownership level, they will always be what they've been for 27 years, a graveyard for coaches, a punchline for the league, a cautionary tale about what happens when dysfunction becomes identity. This story is based on reports from ESPN, NFL Network, Yahoo Sports, The Washington Post, Sports Illustrated, Cleveland.com, Atlanta Falcons official announcements, and various outlets covering the Falcons' coaching staff construction and the Browns' ongoing coaching search disaster.